The night should have been routine, a drive, a goodbye, a quiet elevator ride home. But in the shadows of the parking garage, everything changed. They thought she was just the shy secretary, the woman who filed papers and fetched coffee. They didn't know she'd once been trained to fight wars no one talks about. 15 seconds, 5 assassins, one secret that rewrote his world. And when the smoke cleared, the most feared man in the city looked at the woman who saved his life and said the last thing she ever expected to hear, "Marry me." Because sometimes the deadliest person in the room is the one everyone underestimated.
Welcome to Stagecraft Entertainment, where stories don't just unfold, they command attention. Each audio story is crafted like cinema for the mind, rich with tension, emotion, and truth, celebrating love, identity, and humanity without limits. Lean in and let Stagecraft Entertainment take you inside the story.
3 years. 3 years pretending I was just another office worker filing invoices and answering phones. Just Layla Waters, quiet, polite, unremarkable. The woman who brings coffee and organizes schedules. The woman nobody looks at twice. 3 years convincing myself the tremors in my hands were anxiety, not memory. That the reflex to scan exits and calculate distances was just nerves, not training carved into my bones. And then 15 seconds destroyed the lie. We were leaving the downtown office tower after midnight. Roman DeLuca and his assistant. The concrete chill of the underground lot felt like a warning I ignored. Until 5 men stepped out of the shadows. Knives, gloves, precision. My body moved before my mind caught up. First attacker, throat crushed. Second, wrist snapped clean at the angle I thought I'd forgotten. Third and fourth, kidney strike, eye gouge. The fifth pulled a gun. Too slow. The weapon was out of his hand and in pieces on the ground before he processed the mistake. I drove my knee into his sternum and he folded. 15 seconds, 5 men down. And Roman, head of the DeLuca crime family, second-generation LA royalty, staring at me like I'd turned into lightning in front of him. He didn't ask who I was. He didn't demand an explanation. He just said, quietly, like it was the most obvious truth in the world, "Marry me." For a second, I thought the adrenaline had broken my brain. My knees buckled. He caught me before I hit the ground. His hands were steady, gentle. Men like him aren't supposed to be gentle. I blacked out. I woke in his penthouse. Glass, marble, the glittering sweep of Los Angeles laid out below like a crown he owned. His private doctor checked me, saying nothing about the scars she clearly recognized. When Roman and I were alone, he didn't bother softening his voice. "You were military." Not a question. I swallowed. The truth scraped out of me. Special operations, 8 years. His jaw tightened. "And now you're my secretary." "That was the cover," I exhaled, tired of hiding. "I was placed here to investigate your organization. I was supposed to observe, not intervene." He studied me, not angry, calculating. "And the proposal?" he asked. "Was that part of your assignment?" I shook my head. "No." He went quiet. Then, "I still mean it." My heart stuttered. "You don't even know my real—" "Then tell me." The honesty in his eyes was frightening. Not possessive, not strategic. Bare, human. So I told him. Not everything, but enough. Instead of throwing me out, instead of killing me. He asked me to stay. "Finish what you started," Roman said. "But help me find the traitors. Train my men, and—" A ghost of a smile tugged his mouth. "Consider my offer." "Marriage isn't strategic partnership," I muttered. "In my world," he replied lightly, "it often is." But his gaze said something else, something dangerous, something hopeful. The next morning, I traded heels for combat boots. The sound of them, solid, unapologetic, echoed through the marble lobby like a declaration. His men noticed. They always noticed everything, but this time the shift registered in the tight set of their jaws, the flicker of offense in their eyes. Yesterday, I was the unassuming secretary behind the desk. Today, I was walking the perimeter, correcting posture, questioning routes, dismantling their routines with surgical precision. His security hated me. They hated the drills I forced on them, the audits, the brutal honesty. "You're predictable," I told them flatly, tapping the barrel of a training weapon against the map. "Predictable gets people buried." The resentment was thick enough to choke on. And then slowly, begrudgingly, they respected me. One by one, they started to ask questions instead of resisting. They corrected one another before I could. They ran drills twice because once didn't feel like enough anymore. I watched competence sharpen into something dangerous and disciplined. Through it all, Roman watched, always. Silent, assessing, standing just far enough away to pretend detachment, but close enough that I could feel his attention like heat along my skin. We didn't speak of the proposal again. Not aloud, but it hung between us like static, humming in the charged silence of elevators, at the edge of boardroom tables, in the brief moments where our hands brushed passing files between us. When we were alone, it felt like something coiled, waiting. Not a question, a possibility. Weeks later, when the coordinated hit almost breached his conference room, the world narrowed into angles and outcomes. The table flipped into cover, the glass wall exploded inward, and the air fractured into chaos. I moved without conscious thought, acting on old ghosts and muscle memory. 3 steps, 2 shots, pivot. I killed without hesitation. For mission, for instinct, for him. I protected him. I protected us before I could admit there was an us to protect. When it was done, the room trembled with leftover adrenaline. Glass glittered across the floor like fallen stars. Smoke stung the back of my throat. Men bled, men groaned. The metallic tang of gunfire hung heavy in the air. His guards hovered. He lifted a hand. They stopped. He stepped toward me through the wreckage, calm on the surface, fury beneath, relief flickering, there and gone. But it was for me. His gaze searched my face like he was checking for damage he couldn't see. "You were supposed to stay behind the line," he said quietly. Not anger, not accusation. Fear wearing discipline like armor. "There wasn't time," I answered. "They were already inside." His jaw tightened. "You didn't hesitate." "No." He studied the bodies. Then he studied me, like the math didn't add up. "Why do you keep doing this?" he asked, voice low. "Like your life is the expendable one." The words landed where I never let anyone aim. "I don't have anything else," I said. Too soft, too honest. The admission scraped like broken glass. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then he lifted his hand and touched my face, careful, reverent, like he expected me to splinter. "That's not true," he said. "Not anymore." Something inside me shifted, fragile and terrifying. The world went quiet, not from shock, from proximity to a fall. "I should have kept you out," he murmured. "You couldn't," I said. "I chose." "And that," he replied, raw and unguarded, "is what scares me." He kissed me, not claiming, not rewarding loyalty, not reminding me who ruled the city. He kissed me like a man who had almost lost something he didn't know how to name, and couldn't risk losing again. The kiss was brief, devastating, a promise and a warning wrapped together. When he pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine, breath unsteady. "I don't want you to disappear into sacrifice," he whispered. "I want you." My throat burned. "I don't know how to be anything else." "Then we'll learn," he said, "preferably while you're still breathing." For the first time, I realized the thing that frightened me wasn't the danger beside him. It was the danger of staying long enough to want this, to want him, more than survival. And I already did. The threats escalated. They always do. But this time it felt personal. Patterns shifted. Cameras glitched at convenient moments. Calls came from numbers no one could trace. A shipment route leaked that only 5 people knew. A traitor. Someone Roman trusted like family. Someone whose picture hung in old framed photos on his office wall. Sold us out. When the truth surfaced, the betrayal landed harder than any bullet. Not shock, not rage. Hurt. Like the ground beneath him had quietly, patiently waited for the right moment to give way. And finally did. He didn't shout. He simply lowered himself into the chair and stared at the photo, thumb tracing the frame. "They knew my mother," he said quietly. There was nothing useful to offer. No comfort that didn't feel dishonest. From there, everything tightened. Enemies closed in from both sides of the ocean. European syndicates smelling opportunity. Latin American crews hungry for territory, old alliances shifting like sand. Every message, every meeting, every corridor suddenly felt like a narrowing funnel, and woven through all of it, my past resurfaced, not memories, but names and operators I thought had disappeared for good. Old ghosts recognized the way I moved, the cadence of my planning, the invisible fingerprints of my tactics. They whispered to each other, "She's still alive. She's with him." Roman saw the tension gathering in my shoulders one night as we mapped routes across Europe and the eastern seaboard. His gaze flicked to me. "Someone knows you," he said. "Not just what you've done. Who trained you?" I didn't answer. Silence can be its own confession. We fought, not as principal and asset, not as boss and infiltrator, together. The first time we stood back to back, trading clipped commands while bullets snapped past, something inside me aligned in a way that felt inevitable. Our movements stopped competing and started completing each other. He learned to trust my instincts, even when they looked reckless. I learned to trust his restraint, even when it burned. And we stopped pretending this was just survival. There was something else threaded through every decision, something reckless and fragile and infinitely more dangerous than the men hunting us. Not loyalty, not strategy, choice. Us. Even if neither of us said it out loud. It fully crystallized at the charity gala. Crystal chandeliers, silk gowns, champagne fizzing like starlight. The kind of event where power pretends to be civilized. I wore a dress that moved like water, concealing body armor and 2 knives. Roman wore black on black, a predator wrapped in elegance, his hand resting lightly at the small of my back. To anyone watching, we were simply a powerful man and his striking date. To the people truly watching, the gala was opportunity. A choke point, a distraction, a chance to rewrite the hierarchy of Los Angeles in one bloody night. They didn't realize we'd turned the board. Their trap became ours. The moment our enemies made their move, subtle, coordinated all at once, the room seemed to split along invisible lines. Roman's men shifted out of their roles as servers and security. My quiet surveillance team sealed exits, killed comms, turned the ballroom into a gilded cage. I moved where the danger converged. Roman moved with me, and for a few surreal minutes beneath glittering lights and orchestral strings, violence mingled with velvet, and we dismantled the people who thought they knew our weaknesses. They underestimated how lethal love becomes when it has something to protect. When it was over, with wrists zip-tied, weapons confiscated, alliances shattered, the staff began clearing champagne flutes while the orchestra packed up, like nothing had happened. Back at headquarters, statements were crafted, accounts balanced, lines redrawn. My government team reviewed the final reports. Mission complete. No more handler briefings, no more coded messages, no more orders directing the vector of my life. Officially, I was clear. Unofficially, I had stepped firmly into a world where leaving was no longer as simple as signing off. That realization hit me on Roman's penthouse balcony. Night had spread over Los Angeles, a sea of city lights stretching to the horizon. The wind tugged gently at my hair. Below us, traffic moved like veins pulsing through a living organism. For the first time in years, there was no contingency humming in the back of my mind. No extraction plan, no safe house address rehearsed under my breath. Just stillness. Freedom tasted strange, like something earned and fragile, easy to break if I looked at it wrong. Behind me, I could feel Roman, not touching me, not crowding me, simply there. A presence as solid as the concrete beneath my boots, as steady as the heartbeat I could still remember hearing under my cheek in the darkness. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The city breathed. So did I. And for the first time, I let myself admit it. I wasn't just free from something. I was free for something. And that something was standing just a few steps behind me, quiet, patient, watching like a man who finally understood what it cost someone like me to stay. The balcony doors were still open when I turned. Night air drifted in, cool and clean, carrying the faint scent of salt from the ocean and the distant hum of the city, a city that for once didn't feel like a trap. Roman stood just inside the doorway. He had undone the top buttons of his shirt sometime while I'd been standing out there, and the jacket hung loose at his sides, forgotten. He looked tired, human, like the weight he carried had shifted, settling differently, like mine had too. Our eyes met. For months, there had always been something between us. Mission, danger, timing, secrets. A boundary neither of us dared cross because everything else was already too fragile. But now, for the first time, there was nothing left to hide behind. No orders, no cover, no countdown to leaving, just choice. And the realization slipped quietly through my chest, settling in a place I'd kept barricaded for years. I could stay. He must have seen it, that shift, because his expression changed. Not to hunger, not to possession, to relief. "Layla," he said softly, like he wasn't calling my name so much as checking if I was truly still here. "I'm not running," I answered. The words came out steady. My heartbeat wasn't. He took a few slow steps toward me, careful, always careful with me, like I was something dangerous and delicate all at once. He stopped when he was close enough that I could feel his warmth, but far enough that the next move would be mine. He was giving me the out. He always did. I reached for him. My fingers curled into the front of his shirt, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest beneath the fabric. For so long, touch had meant control, leverage, survival. This felt different. This felt like permission. "I don't know who I am without the mission," I whispered, "without the running, without the next exit in my head." His hand came up slowly, brushing a strand of hair away from my cheek. His touch was warm, grounding. "Then we'll find out together," he said, "at your pace, on your terms." Something inside me loosened. I leaned in, not because adrenaline demanded it, not because fear drove it, but because I wanted to. Because the silence between us finally felt safe. Our lips met, slow and unhurried. It wasn't a battle, it wasn't desperation, it was discovery. He kissed me like he was memorizing, not taking, his hand resting at the small of my back, steady and supportive rather than insistent. I melted into him, surprised by the softness in myself, by how natural it felt not to brace, not to anticipate pain. For the first time, my body wasn't preparing to fight. It was simply allowed to feel. He pulled me closer, but only as much as I allowed, following my lead as I deepened the kiss, threading my fingers into his hair, feeling the faint tremor in him that mirrored my own. When we moved toward the bedroom, it wasn't hurried. It was deliberate, a choosing. The city lights spilled through the windows, laying pale gold across the sheets as his hands traced my shoulders like a promise rather than a claim. I cupped his face, studying him. The lines at the corners of his eyes, the scar beneath his ear, the vulnerability he didn't try to hide from me anymore. "You're sure?" he murmured. Freedom surged quietly through me. Not the wild kind that demands escape, but the kind that lets you finally stay. "Yes," I said, "because this isn't running. It's living." His smile was small, reverent. What followed wasn't about urgency, it was about trust. Skin against skin without armor, breath shared, hearts stumbling into the same rhythm. He held me like someone who understood exactly what it cost me to let him. And I touched him like someone finally unafraid of wanting. We moved together, not as two people hiding from the world, but as two people letting it fall away. Later, we lay tangled in sheets and moonlight, my head resting against his chest, his arm wrapped around my waist like a gentle anchor. The city glowed quietly beyond the windows. He pressed a kiss into my hair. "You feel different," he murmured. "I am," I said, for the first time in a long time. "I'm not surviving." His hand tightened slightly, protective but not confining. "What are you doing then?" I breathed in, slow and easy. "Choosing." And for once, the choice didn't feel like surrender. It felt like freedom. Sunlight found its way into the room before I did. It crept in slowly through the floor-to-ceiling windows, washing the sheets in a pale gold that felt impossibly calm compared to everything that had led us here. For a moment, I stayed still, listening. No alarms, no sirens, no footsteps rushing outside the door. Just the steady, quiet rhythm of Roman's breathing beneath my cheek. His arm rested around my waist, loose, not trapping, more like an anchor than a restraint. I traced the faint scar along his shoulder with my fingertips, not out of curiosity, but out of something gentler, something dangerously close to tenderness. He shifted slightly. "You're awake," he murmured, voice roughened by sleep. I nodded against his chest. "So are you." "Couldn't risk this being a dream," he said, and I felt the smile more than I saw it, a small curve beneath the words. The softness in the room felt surreal. For years, mornings meant movement. Pack the bag, secure the perimeter, run if necessary. Now there was sunlight and quiet and the warmth of someone choosing not to leave. Freedom didn't feel like the absence of chains. It felt like this, slow breaths and no immediate need to armor myself. But reality, like muscle memory, never stayed dormant for long. I saw it before he said anything. That flicker across Roman's features when his thoughts drifted outward, toward the world waiting beyond the bedroom door, toward the traitor who had almost undone everything. He exhaled. "They're still looking," he said quietly. "Digging through financials, call logs, surveillance gaps. Someone inside knows exactly where to cut." My fingers stilled. Nico's face flashed across my mind, then others. Not just lieutenants, friends, confidants, men who'd toasted weddings and mourned losses with Roman for years. "Trust doesn't disappear just because we pull the thread," I said softly. "It unravels one memory at a time. That's the hard part." He looked down at me, eyes shadowed. "And what about yours?" It wasn't a question about operations. It was about us. I swallowed. "I'm still learning not to treat every attachment like a liability," I admitted. "It's work." He brushed his thumb gently along my arm, thoughtful. "Then we work, with the traitor, with the mess, with—" He hesitated just a fraction. "This." We fell quiet again. Outside, the city was waking. Somewhere below, engines revved, horns blared, deals began. Somewhere else, a man who had smiled at Roman over dinner tables and shared family secrets was still out there, waiting, planning, thinking he remained unseen. Danger wasn't gone. It had simply changed shape. Roman pressed a soft kiss into my hair. "I want you at the meeting today," he said. "Not because I don't trust my men, because I trust your eyes." Old instinct flared. The tactical awareness, the gut wired to spot lies and patterns others missed. But layered beneath it now was something new. Choice. "All right," I said. "We hunt carefully. No assumptions, no shortcuts." His lips curved again. That subtle, quietly amused smile that only appeared when I started sounding like command staff. "You realize you just volunteered to terrify my entire inner circle." "They'll recover," I said. "Or they won't. Either way, it'll be educational." He laughed under his breath, then sobered, fingers tightening around mine as if grounding both of us. "Stay close," he said. I tilted my head up, meeting his gaze. "Not because you need protecting," he added softly, "because I'm better when you're near." Heat bloomed low in my chest. Not desire, though that lingered in the edges of the room. Something steadier. Partnership. I rested my hand over his heart. "Then don't confuse proximity with safety," I warned gently. "The traitor didn't disappear just because we made it through last night." His eyes hardened. Not cold, but focused. "No," he said. "But he made one mistake already." "What's that?" "He underestimated who you'd become once you stopped running." We lay there another minute, letting the quiet settle one last time before the day called us forward. Then I slid out of the bed, reaching for clothes. He watched. Not with hunger, but with something deeper. Respect, curiosity, a grief-tinged awareness that peace, for people like us, was measured in moments. This was one, we didn't waste it. Roman held the meeting in the conference room no one liked using. Too much glass, too much sky, too easy to imagine falling. The table stretched between us like a negotiation line, polished, immovable, a battlefield disguised in walnut veneer. The men seated there weren't soldiers today. They wore tailored suits and careful faces. Nico sat third from the left, close enough to feel involved, not close enough to seem central, intentional. Roman didn't sit immediately. He moved, unhurried, collected, around the far end of the table, letting silence expand long enough to remind everyone in the room whose building this was. I took my spot against the wall, not at the table, not one of them. Watching, every entrance, every angle, every hand that hovered too long near a pocket, every throat swallow, every micro-expression that flickered and died. Roman finally spoke. Somebody, he said quietly, sold us out. No one shifted. Good men don't shift. Guilty ones know better. He clasped his hands loosely in front of him, calm, lethal. I'm not asking for confessions, he continued. If I wanted those, you'd be in different chairs. I just want clarity. A ripple of forced relaxation passed through the room. Men exhaled, shoulders dropped slightly. Not Nico. Nico smiled, not wide, not smug, just enough, like he'd figured out the math and accepted where he landed. I studied him, pulse visible in his neck, steady. Eyes direct, but slightly over-focused. Breathing, too controlled. Counting. He was rehearsing calm. Roman slid a folder onto the table and opened it. 3 weeks ago, he said, a warehouse route leaked, one only 5 of you had access to. He didn't look at any of them. He looked at me, just long enough to include me in what came next. I felt the shift. He wasn't lecturing, he was laying a trap. We cross-referenced financial hits, burner purchases, location pings, and internal messages. We narrowed it. Tension thickened. Even the air vents seemed to pause. Roman's voice softened, which with him was always more dangerous. But I'm not interested in math. He tapped the table lightly. I'm interested in tells. Heads turned toward me now. Slowly. Uneasy. I pushed off the wall, took my time crossing to the monitor. I pulled up the still image I'd shown Roman the night the truth first clicked. The security footage. 2:13 a.m. Nico entering the warehouse. I enlarged it. Look here, I said. Not accusing. Clinical. Nico didn't flinch, which was the first flinch. He checks over his shoulder, one of the men said. Everyone checks, I replied. That's survival, but watch the order. I ran the footage again. Door, corner camera, left blind spot, then over the shoulder. He scans like someone who knows where the lenses are, I continued. Not someone guessing. Someone who's seen the layout. Recently. A murmur moved across the table. I clicked again. Pulled up the second clip. Valdez muscle arriving exactly 3 minutes later. Same path, same blind spots, same look back. Only once. They trusted the path, I said softly. He didn't. He knew where it could fail them. That means he wasn't meeting them for the first time that night. My gaze went to Nico. He had stopped blinking. Roman noticed. He always noticed. I had your files reviewed, I added, turning the knife a degree at a time. All of you. 11 of you updated badges 2 months ago when we changed scanners. 1 didn't. A beat, silence. I let it land. Because he already had access. Nico leaned back slowly. Too slow, trying not to escalate, trying to appear insulted rather than cornered. You're reaching, he said lightly. Security footage and timing, that's pattern, I cut in gently. And people don't betray who they hate. They betray who they feel entitled to. Something flickered across Roman's face. Memory, pain. I kept going. The fake shipment, the one that never existed, I asked. You didn't question it, Nico. You approved it faster than any of the others. Faster than protocol allows. I slid a printout across the table toward him. 2 signatures, too close together. He stared at it a second longer than a clean conscience would have required. Then he smiled again. Wrong time. It was busy. Mistakes happen. I tilted my head, and yet the mistake always benefits the same side. A muscle feathered in his jaw. There. That was the tell. Not the footage, not the paperwork, not the timing. The moment he stopped playing cooperative cousin and started calculating exit routes. I stepped closer to Roman's side, not striking distance, anchor distance. He didn't look at me, but I felt the acknowledgement. Roman straightened, finally taking his seat at the head of the table. His fingers steepled. Nico, he said softly. Not cousin, not family, name only. You grew up at my table. You buried my father with me. You stood beside me when I took this chair. Nico swallowed, quiet, tight. Roman's gaze cooled by a degree I'd seen only a handful of times. And somehow you forgot that loyalty isn't leverage. Nico opened his mouth, too quick, and that sealed it. Roman lifted 2 fingers slightly. Security materialized from the edges of the room, not rushing, calm, precise. Nico's chair scraped back as he surged to his feet. Instinct, not thought. But the moment was already gone. 2 men had his arms. Another relieved him of the gun he shouldn't have brought into the room. The mask finally cracked. Fear wasn't loud. It was hollow. He looked at Roman, not pleading, accusing. "You replaced me," he hissed. "She replaced me. You let her crawl into the wiring of your life and didn't even see it." He jerked his chin at me. "There's your tell." Roman didn't look away from him when he answered. "No," he said. "She's the reason you're still breathing long enough to talk." The room shifted around that sentence. Respect, realignment. Nico's jaw clenched as they pulled him toward the door. He spat one last thing over his shoulder. "You think you cut the problem. You didn't. You only found the one dumb enough to go first." The door shut behind him. Silence held. Outside the glass, Los Angeles glittered, oblivious. Roman exhaled slowly. Not relieved, resigned. His gaze slid to me. "Names behind the threat," he murmured, echoing our earlier conversation. I nodded. "We have one," I said quietly. But he wasn't lying about the rest. The problem wasn't solved. The board just got clearer, and Roman, for the first time, didn't look like a man betrayed. He looked like a man finally ready to hunt. The room emptied slowly, the way people leave a church after bad news, quiet, respectful, unwilling to turn their backs too quickly on what they've just witnessed. When the door finally shut, the silence changed. It wasn't grieving anymore. It was sharpening. Roman remained seated for a moment, fingers pressed together, gaze fixed on the far window like the city itself had become an enemy board. The faint light caught the silver at his temples, the edge in his eyes. I knew that look. Not vengeance, calculation, the kind of focus men get when they stop reacting and start designing outcomes. He breathed once, steady. "He was right about one thing," Roman said, not looking at me. "This wasn't just Nico." "No," I agreed. "He was a lever. Someone else is still pulling." His jaw tightened. "We find them quietly," he said. "We don't spook them. Not yet." I nodded. "Quiet is my specialty." He finally stood, and when his eyes met mine, the weight of leadership, of history, of betrayal, all of it, lived there. But beneath it, something new had settled. Acceptance, not of the loss, of the work ahead. "We'll need to reset routes," he continued. "Screen every handler, rebuild command chains and make them think we haven't." "I've already started," I said. "They won't see it, not right away." He studied me, not surprised, almost relieved. "Good," he murmured, but then something flickered across his expression. Something quieter, unspoken. Fatigue, human, the cost. For a beat, neither of us moved. Outside, the city churned with nightlife and secrets. Up here, everything felt suspended. A slight pause before momentum resumed. "Go home," he said finally, softer. "Get 3 hours, maybe 4. There were nights when I would have obeyed simply because rest meant thinking less. Tonight, I shook my head. "You don't sleep on nights like this," I replied. "You just stare at ceilings and rehearse the mistakes you didn't make." His mouth curved slightly. A shared truth. He walked toward the door, then stopped. Hesitation rare enough in him that I noticed. "Stay," he said, voice lower. "Not because I need protection in my own house." He held my gaze. "But because I don't want to be alone with a ghost tonight." The honesty of it landed somewhere deep inside my chest. I didn't answer. I just nodded. We left the war room together, the corridor quiet beneath our footsteps, the building slowly settling into the illusion of calm. By the time we reached the penthouse, night had taken full possession of the city, and inside, it already felt like another world. That's how it feels when it's just the two of us. The city is a glittering river of light below. The windows are dark mirrors reflecting our silhouettes, him standing by the glass, me curled sideways on his sofa, boots on, gun on the coffee table like a third presence in the room. The blueprint of the old cannery on Terminal Island lies between us. Rusting steel, long sight lines, multiple entries. I picked it because it's a kill box, for them, not us. You don't have to go tomorrow, Roman says without looking at me. I have men. And they don't move like I do, I reply. Layla. My name in his mouth is both warning and plea. I swing my legs down and stand, cross to him. The glass is cool against my shoulder when I stop beside him. You brought me into this, I say softly. You asked me to stay. You asked me to make you harder to kill, remember? I didn't ask you to trade your life for mine. You say that like it's not a package deal. He turns then, so close I have to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. They're dark, tired, burning. I propose to you in a parking garage, he says, surrounded by bodies. That's not what I want for you. You don't get to want for me, I counter, even as my chest tightens. That's not how this works. He exhales through his nose, a rough sound. What do you want? He asks. I open my mouth. Nothing comes out. What do I want? Not to run? Not to bury myself in another cover identity? Not to wake up in a cold bed in a city where nobody knows my name? I want this. The impossible. A man with blood on his hands and gentleness in his touch. A life between the cracks of violence and peace. I want you alive, I say finally. Tomorrow, next week, next year. That's all I can let myself want right now. And after, he presses, if we walk out of that cannery together, if Nico is gone, Valdez is crippled, if no one is coming for us for once in our lives, then what? I swallow. Then I'll think about the rest, I whisper. His hand lifts like he's not sure he's allowed to touch me. Then his fingers curl around the back of my neck, thumb resting just under my jaw. Then I'll make sure we get to the part where you can think about it, he murmurs. He kisses me, slow and deliberate, not like goodbye, like a promise. I kiss him back and let myself believe, for just a breath, that tomorrow might end with both of us still breathing. The air inside the cannery tastes like rust and old salt. Dust motes drift through thin shafts of light, knifing down from cracked skylights. The Pacific rolls and slaps against the pilings below, its rhythm a muffled, constant threat. I stand at Roman's right shoulder. Black tactical pants, fitted jacket, hair braided tight. Under the fabric, Kevlar. Under my skin, years of training coiled and humming. Roman moves like he's on a silent stage, every line of his body radiating calm authority. His suit is charcoal, his shirt black, no tie. An open throat, a silver chain at his neck that glints when he steps into the light. Arturo Silva waits near the center of the open floor. Valdez lieutenant. Diplomat when needed, executioner when not. He looks sharper than he did in the intel photos. Immaculate boots, leather jacket tailored to fit, dark hair slicked back. His eyes are bright and cold, cataloging exits, distances, weaknesses. Men flank him, Valdez shooters, guns visible, casual, meant to intimidate. Roman's men are everywhere, on catwalks, behind crates, watching from the shadows with guns low and ready. We walk to the taped line on the concrete. Mr. DeLuca, Arturo says, spreading his arms slightly, respectful, but with the lazy confidence of a man convinced he still holds leverage. Silva, Roman replies. His voice is pleasant, almost bored. I feel the tension coiled in the tendons of his hand from here. You didn't have to make such a production of this, Arturo says. We could have handled it quiet, like businessmen. Roman's mouth curves. You don't handle betrayal quietly, and you don't invite the Valdez cartel for coffee. You bring a gun, or 10. Arturo smiles like he appreciates the joke, but it never reaches his eyes. They flick to me. And the shadow, he adds lightly. You hide well, Layla. Files never did you justice. Your files are outdated, I reply. Try to keep up. The smile thins. I warned my people, he says, tapping his temple. Told them you were the variable, too still, always reading the room, the kind that ruins good plans. Funny, I say. I said the same thing about you. Our timing is precise. Arturo lifts his hand. Just a casual, conversational gesture. The first shot cracks from the mezzanine to our left. My body is already moving. Left catwalk, I shout, shoving Roman hard. The bullet meant for his head punches into me high in the shoulder, just above the vest. A brutal, concussive impact that spins me half around. Heat tears down my arm, white hot and blinding. I hit the concrete on my side. Noise detonates. Roman's men return fire. Valdez shooters scatter for cover. Another round sparks off the floor inches from my hand. Move, Layla. I roll behind a stack of pallets, biting back a scream as my shoulder grinds against rough wood. My right arm is numb. My left hand finds the backup pistol at my ankle, and the world funnels into angles and outcomes. I pop up and fire at the silhouette on the catwalk. He staggers, falls. Layla! Roman's voice rips across the chaos. Focus, DeLuca. I snap, more harsh than I mean to, but I need him alive, not distracted. 3 right, 2 behind the crane. He obeys. He always does when it comes to staying alive. I track another shooter moving for higher ground. My vision blurs, then sharpens, adrenaline fighting shock. Blood runs warm down my side, soaking into my waistband, dripping to the floor. Someone rushes the pallets, close, heavy boots breathing too loud. I let him get near, then pivot, driving my heel out. My boot connects with his knee. It collapses. I come up, gun pressed under his jaw. 1, I hiss. He doesn't get a second chance. Minutes stretch and snap. The cannery fills with the sharp stink of spent rounds and the metallic tang of blood. Roman moves like violence made flesh, controlled, precise, ruthless. Then suddenly, it's quiet. I blink. Bodies on the floor. Roman's men, those still standing, sweeping the space, calling clear. Roman is already moving toward me. I try to push up. Pain roars. The room tilts. He's there before I fall, arms catching me, lowering me down instead of letting me slam onto the concrete. His face swims in front of mine. Too close, too far, eyes blown wide with something I've never seen in him before. Terror. Stay with me, he orders. Layla, hey, look at me. Eyes on me. That's an order. I want to tell him he doesn't outrank me, but my mouth won't cooperate. It's just a shoulder, I manage, voice slurred. You should see what I've lived through. Don't, he says, voice breaking. Don't talk like that. You're fine. You're going to be fine. Statistically, I trail off as black spots swarm the edges of my vision. Shock, blood loss, not ideal odds. Fuck your statistics, he snarls. I feel his hands pressing hard against the wound, trying to stem the flow. Dom, he shouts over his shoulder. Get the car. Call Elena. Tell her to prep the OR. I blink up at the rafters. They flicker, then go out. The last thing I feel is his forehead pressed to mine and his voice in my ear, ragged and raw. Don't you dare leave me, Layla. Don't you walk away now.
Hospitals have their own kind of silence. Not the peaceful kind, the punished kind, the kind that makes every whisper sound like a sin. I sit in the hard plastic chair beside her bed and refuse to move. They took my shirt hours ago, cut it open where her blood had soaked into it. Now I'm in a black t-shirt someone shoved at me, dark jeans streaked with grime from the cannery floor. My knuckles are split. I don't remember when that happened. Elena pushed me out of the operating room 3 hours ago. She's strong, she said. Clean entry, messy exit. The bullet missed anything that will kill her quickly. That's the good news. And the bad? I asked. The bad is she's lost a lot of blood, and she's stubborn. People like that fight everyone, even the doctors trying to save them. Now machines beep and hum around her. An IV drip counts time I can't control. Her shoulder is bandaged tight. Her skin is too pale against the white sheets, the rich brown of it washed out by blood loss. Layla Waters, my secretary, my soldier, my salvation. Lying too still, I lean forward, forearms braced on my knees. Fingers laced so tight they tremble. Do you know, I say quietly, not sure if I'm talking to her or to myself. The first time I saw you, I thought you were a mistake. Her chest lifts beneath the thin blanket. Slow, steady. I count every breath like it's gold. They sent you in as a corporate hire, I go on. HR said you'd clean up the legitimate mess. I figured you'd last a week, maybe 2. I swallow. But you didn't flinch when men yelled. You didn't soften when those old bastards tried talking over you. You just fixed things, quiet, precise. You stared down my bookkeeper until he confessed he'd been skimming, and you never even raised your voice. A breath escapes me that might almost be a laugh. You terrify men twice your size without even trying. Did you know that? Her hand lies limp on the sheet. I reach out slowly as if she might shatter and wrap my fingers around hers. Her skin is warm. It shouldn't feel like a miracle, but it does. I meant it, I say, voice rough. In the parking garage. I know it sounded insane. I know it was adrenaline, but I meant it. The memory tastes like gunpowder and shock. 5 men on the ground, her eyes bright and furious, my words slipping out like instinct. Marry me. I've had a lot of bad ideas, I murmur. That wasn't one of them. The monitors keep their steady rhythm. Something in my chest threatens to tear open. I don't know how to do this, I admit. Sit here while you decide whether you're staying or going. I can make men disappear. I can break a cartel. But I can't fight your body for you. That's a war I don't get to win. My throat tightens. I bow my head and press my forehead against the back of her hand. If you live, I whisper. Every word a vow. I won't waste it. I won't drag you deeper into darkness than you choose to go. I won't make you run for me. I won't trap you. I will ask. And if you say no, I'll take it. I'll live with it. A single tremor racks my shoulders. But I need you to wake up and tell me, I say. No more disappearing. No more doors closing without goodbye. Silence settles. Outside, the city keeps moving. Deals are made and broken. Valdez scrambles to recover from the cannery. Down the hall, a traitor curses into a pillow under guard. None of it matters. I sit and I wait.
Coming back feels like dragging myself up through deep water. Sound arrives first. The soft, steady beep, beep, beep. The muted hum of ventilation. The distant murmur of voices in the hallway. Then the ache, dull and heavy, centered in my left shoulder and radiating out in pulses. My eyelids feel like they're weighted. I peel them open. The room is dim, lit by a lamp in the corner. The curtains are half drawn, showing a sliver of city lights beyond. The air smells like antiseptic and something familiar. Cologne. Roman is slumped in the chair beside my bed, head tilted against the wall, arms crossed over his chest. Stubble shadows his jaw. His eyes are closed, but his whole body has the tense, coiled look of a man ready to spring at the smallest sound. I shift a little. Pain flares, sharp enough to make me hiss. His eyes snap open. For a second, he looks feral, disoriented. Then he registers me. Layla! My name comes out on a breath that sounds like a prayer. He's on his feet and at my side before I can blink. Hey, take it easy. Don't move too much, you'll tear the stitches. My mouth is dry as dust. Water? He grabs the plastic cup, guides the straw to my lips with a hand that shakes noticeably. I take a careful sip. Coolness slides down my throat. How long? I manage. 18 hours, he says. He swallows, looking like the number physically hurts him. Surgery was complicated. Bullet chewed the exit. Elena had to fix a lot. Is she mad at me? I try to smile and immediately regret it when it pulls on something sore. Roman's laugh is half choked. Furious. At me. She says I attract suicidal women. Unfair, I mumble. I'm very selective with my suicide missions. It comes out weaker than I intend. But his mouth curves anyway, eyes going suspiciously bright. You're okay? He asks, like he doesn't quite believe what he's seeing. I glance down at myself. Hospital gown, bandages, IV. I've been better, I admit. But I've been worse too, so... I'll take it. Silence stretches. He's staring at me, really staring, like he's checking for glitches in reality. You saved my life, he says finally, voice low. Again. That's what I signed up for, I reply. He shakes his head. No, he says. You signed up to spy on me. Then you signed up to train my people. You did not sign up to step in front of a bullet meant for me. I didn't think, I say honestly. My body did what it always does. He flinches, the tiniest movement. I need you to think, he says quietly, because if you die for me, Layla, I don't know who I am after that. His words land heavier than any bullet. I look away, to the faint reflection of us in the dark window. Me, pale and wired to machines. Him standing over me like a shadow, refusing to be shaken. Everyone I've ever loved has died, I say softly. The truth tastes like old blood. My unit, my family, friends who got too close. They go in the ground. I walk away. That's how it works. He doesn't argue. He just takes my hand, thumb brushing across my knuckles, gentle and grounding. Maybe that's how it worked, he says. Until now. I snort, a weak sound. You think you're special enough to break curses, DeLuca? I think I'm stubborn enough to try, he answers. And I think you've been surviving so long you forgot that's not the same as living. I shut my eyes. He's not wrong. That's the worst part. When I wake next, it's lighter. Late afternoon sunlight filters through the curtains, painting the room in soft gold. My shoulder hurts less. The fog in my head has thinned. A tray with untouched food sits on the rolling table. Hospital mashed potatoes have never looked less appealing. Roman stands by the window, back to me, suit jacket on now, posture straight, talking in low tones into his phone. No, Valdez won't be a problem. We cut off the head, the rest will scramble. Yes, keep Nico breathing. I want him conscious when I decide what to do with him. He pauses, listening. Handle it, he says finally. I'm not leaving her longer than I have to. He hangs up and turns. Our eyes meet. Something settles deep inside me, like a puzzle piece snapping into place. You're supposed to be running an empire, I say. My voice is stronger. Not hovering over my hospital bed. The empire can wait, he says simply. I've spent my whole life making sure it never could. It's going to learn. He walks to the bed, stops just short of touching me, like he's holding himself back by sheer will. Layla Waters, he says. And I know something is coming from the look on his face. Calm on the surface, emotion roiling underneath. I made a promise while you were on that table. Roman! I promised that if you woke up, I wouldn't trap you, that I'd ask, properly, and accept whatever answer you gave me. My heart kicks against my ribs. Don't, I whisper. Not now. I'm drugged, vulnerable. That's cheating. His mouth twitches, but his gaze stays steady. I've proposed to you twice in my head already, he says. Once while I thought you were dying. Once while Elena yelled at me in the hallway. This time, you're awake for it. He reaches into his pocket, pulls out a small box. My throat closes. Roman! He opens it. The ring inside is not delicate, it's bold. A deep blue sapphire set in a halo of smaller diamonds, thick platinum band, strong and unapologetic. First time, he says quietly, I asked because watching you dismantle 5 men in an underground garage felt like fate. This time I'm asking because you took a bullet for me, and somehow the part that scares me most isn't the blood. It's the fact that you were willing to leave me behind. Tears prick hot at the corners of my eyes. I don't know how to do this, I say, voice shaking. I don't know how to wake up every day and not brace for losing the person I stop, breath hitching. He leans in, eyes softening. Say it, he murmurs. At least once, for me. The person I love, I force out. My chest aches, but it's a different kind of pain. You are a terrible idea, Roman DeLuca. You are dangerous and complicated and everything I promised myself I would never get attached to. He smiles, small and devastating. I know, he says. That's why I'm perfect for you. A laugh bursts out of me, wet and incredulous. You're ridiculous. I'm in love with you, he says, simple and stark. Not with what you can do for me. Not with the way you move in a fight, though, if I'm being honest, is really hot. I'm in love with the woman who reorganized my crooked empire so my people get paid on time. who buys extra coffee pods because the night crew forgets, who stands between me and bullets and still apologizes for bleeding on my shirt. He takes a breath. I can't promise you safety, he continues. Not in my world. But I can promise you this. I will fight like hell to give you a life, not just a series of escapes. I will listen when you say stop. I will trust you with my life, my business, my family. And I will not run when you get scared and try to push me away. He lifts the ring slightly. So, I'm asking you, eyes open, sober, well, medically enhanced, but lucid enough to argue with me, Layla Waters. Will you marry me? The room feels too small for the size of the moment. All the old scripts spin up in my head. This is dangerous. This is reckless. This is how you lose everything. But lying on that warehouse floor, bleeding out, the only thought that really stuck was, I'm not done. Not with him. Not with us. I stare at the ring, then at the man holding it. I can't promise I'll be good at this, I whisper. I can't promise I won't freak out, that I won't wake up some nights and start packing a bag, because running is what I know. Then I'll sit on the suitcase, he says, without missing a beat. A startled laugh escapes me, mixing with tears. I can't promise I won't shove you out of the way again, I add. I don't know how not to, he nods, eyes shining. Then I'll wear better body armor. Roman? Layla. His voice softens. You don't have to promise you won't be you. That's the point. I'm asking for exactly who you are, scars and reflexes included. Silent stretches. The machines keep their steady rhythm, oblivious. Yes, I say. It's small at first, barely audible, but it's real. His breath catches. Yes? He repeats, like he needs confirmation. Yes, I say again, stronger this time. You infuriating, impossible, ridiculous man. Yes, I'll marry you, on one condition. His brows lift. Name it. You don't die on me, I say. You take care of yourself like your life isn't disposable. You let me protect you without trying to undo it out of some macho death wish. If I'm staying, you're staying too. Deal? His smile is sudden and brilliant, wiping 10 years off his face. Deal, he says. My hand shakes when I lift it. He slips the ring onto my finger with a care that makes my chest ache. It settles there like it's been waiting. Looks good on you, he murmurs. It's flashy, I say, voice unsteady. So are you, he counters. You just hide it better. He leans down, pauses a breath away. Can I kiss my fiancé? He asks, or is that against doctor's orders? I loop my good arm weakly around his neck. Get over here, DeLuca. He kisses me like a man who walked through hell and found the exit sign he'd never believed in. I kiss him back, like someone finally choosing something other than survival. For the first time in years, my future isn't a blank space I refuse to look at. It's a messy, dangerous, chaotic thing full of arguments and late-night strategy sessions and shared coffee and probably more bullets than is strictly healthy. It's a life, our life. And this time, I'm not running from it. I'm walking straight in.
Thank you for listening to today's story, where strong men and strong women meet in a world rich with culture, courage, and connection. These stories remind us that love is limitless, that strength comes in many forms, and that every race, every age, and every gender has a place in powerful storytelling. If this journey moved you, inspired you, or made you think a little differently, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with someone who believes in love without boundaries. Join us next time as we explore more characters who challenge expectations, break barriers, and discover that the heart has no labels. Until then, stay open, stay inspired, and keep celebrating every shade of humanity. See you in the next story.